Okay, the last section that I just read, the previous section I just read, the bulk of Daniel 11, is basically indisputable in terms of what this is and what it's referring to. The question, of course, is was this written ahead of time or was this written afterwards? But we know from other historical information and materials that who these people are that's being referred to in this chapter. We know who the kings of the south are, who the kings of the north are, and who these daughters are that get exchanged back and forth to be married, who these commanders are that come from the west. Okay, it's like we have that information, and I don't believe there's really any doubt or argument about who these titles throughout this chapter from verses 2 through 35 are referring to. That's going to change here starting in 1136. From now on until the end of Daniel 12, the end of the book, there's a lot of controversy and a lot of question about who and what is being spoken of. And nobody has the definitive answer to this question. I am not in a position where I can tell you or I can say confidently that I have the end-all be-all answer to this. These are some very, very, very difficult verses. Okay? There's a couple, so we're going to, the first, I will tell you what I think, okay? And like I said, I've read the book of Daniel a lot. I've studied Daniel for 20 years now, pretty extensively, and I've read many different schools of thought about it. So I do feel qualified to teach you about it, but I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal and say that I have the end-all be-all here. So from chapter 11, verse 36 to the end of the chapter, the first words here, in English at least, are, the king will do as he pleases. Okay. Now, in our Bibles, we have, in this printed version of the Bible, we have a section break there. We have a new title saying the king who exalts himself. It is not clear. We're still going to be using the terms king of the south and king of the north. Those terms are still going to be used. It does not appear as though we're still talking about Antiochus IV. We've already discussed that his end is decreed. Excuse me. We read about that, and also in Daniel 8. So it appears as though we have moved on from talking about Antiochus IV. And the section, the information given here, the next 10 verses or so, do not apply to what we know historically about Antiochus IV. Everything else does. Everything up to this point does. But from 36 to the end of the chapter, this material doesn't seem to fit what we know about Antiochus IV. So it doesn't appear, and we did talk about how we did mention his end. Antiochus IV's end has been talked about a couple times. Appointed time of the end. Because the end will come to the appointed time in verse 27. Verse 35, the spotless until the time of the end. We read about that also in Daniel 8, the 2300 evenings and mornings, how long it will take to finish this. How long will the sanctuary be trampled underfoot. And then it says also in verse 28, he will cause the seat, chapter 8, verse, starting in verse 23, it says, in the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a stern-faced king, a master of intrigues, Antiochus again, will arise. He will be very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation, and will succeed at whatever he does. He will destroy the mighty men and the holy people. He will cause the seat to prosper. He will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many, and take his stand against the prince of princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. So we talked about his end already. He ends up, by the way, Antiochus ends up falling ill. He is east, I forget where exactly, he's in Persia or Babylon maybe. He is east of Israel when the news comes. So he has seized control of Jerusalem and the city and the holy place and the citadels there. His army has taken control of it, and they desecrated the temple. They sacrificed a pig to it. They set up an altar to Zeus or Jupiter on it. They've abolished the Jewish sacrifices and the Jewish system. for about 3 years, but they eventually get overthrown and thrown out, and by the revolters, which we read about in the Maccabean books, because the leader of that revolt was a guy named Judas Maccabees. And they dedicate the temple, they cleanse it, they rededicate, they begin using it again properly. That's what the Feast of Dedication is for. That happens on December 25th. This happened on December 25th, 167 BC. That is when they were, that's in our calendars, that is when they rededicated the temple on December 25th, 167 BC, which is why they celebrate that day even to this tomorrow, by the way, is that day. And when that news, and Antiochus is not there for that, he is somewhere else. And when the news of that reaches him, he gets sick. He gets so distraught by it that he gets sick and he dies. That's how he ends up meeting his end. So we seem to have moved on from talking about him, talking about something else. So let's read from chapter 36 on down and see if we can figure out what this is. The king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed. What has been determined must take place. He will show no regard for the gods of his fathers, or for the one desired by women. That probably means the Messiah, because it was the desire of women in Daniel's culture and time to be the mother of the Messiah. So he's probably saying he'll show no regard for his own father's gods or for the anointed one, the Jewish Messiah to come. So, nor will he regard any god. So he's just not going to care about any of that. He's not going to care about the traditions of his own people, the gods of his fathers, or the traditions of the Jewish people, the one desired by women, looking forward to this future Messiah, or any other god. But he will exalt himself above them all. Instead of them, he will honor a god of fortresses, a god unknown to his fathers. He will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign god, and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. He will make them rulers over many people, and will distribute the land at a price, or the land for a reward. Now, we've said two things here, back to back, that seem to go completely against each other. He's not going to regard any god, but he will regard the god of fortresses. Basically, what we're saying here is that this guy will believe anything he needs to believe in order to get what he wants, which is power. It doesn't matter what it is or where it comes from. If it's useful to him on his quest to gain power, he will go for it. He will do whatever he has to do. He will say whatever he has to say. He will believe whatever he has to believe in order to gain power. If that means disregarding the God, he himself won't believe in anything. Okay, he won't believe in the gods of his fathers, so the traditions of his own people, whoever they are. He won't believe in the one desired by women, which is the Messiah, the desired Jewish woman to give birth to the Messiah, to be the mother of the Messiah. He won't believe in that. He won't regard any god. All he cares about is power. All he cares about is his own glory and might, and he will do or say anything he needs to do in order to increase that. Okay, so this could refer to anybody. We seem to have moved on beyond talking about Antiochus IV at this point, and we're talking about just some future king who's going to be like this. It is my conviction, not really, I guess that's the right word to use, that at this point we have switched from talking about the king of the north in the term, it is still the king of the north, by the way. We'll read about that in the next verse. But I think we have moved beyond talking about and the king of the north being the king of the Seleucid kingdoms in Syria, north of Israel, to being the king of Rome, which is also north of Israel, because of what we read about here in the next few verses. I don't know. Wow. I don't know if this is any one king of the north, king of Rome, as much as it is a description, kind of a blanket statement fitting all of them. We've already talked about the first 11 emperors of Rome, the horns that were on the head of the fourth beast, so we read in Daniel 7. And that covers from Augustus, Caesar, down to Domitian, the first 11 emperors of Rome. Julius Caesar was not an emperor. He was the guy who gave that title, the name Caesar to that position, but he was not actually an emperor. So we have that. I think so. We've already seen in Daniel 7 that these divisions of Daniel go all the way down to that, and we saw in Daniel 9 again a reference to the people of the future who will come and destroy the city and temple and sanctuary again, which are the Romans. So we've already mentioned the Romans a couple of times, and I think here we're stretching down and talking about them again. I think we're switching from the Grecian Empire now to the Roman. We had a subject switch back in verse 3 when we went from the king of Persia to the king of Greece. Now I know that the king of I know that the switch in the subject in verse 3 was a little bit more pronounced. Then a mighty king will appear. But we still switched from the king of Persia to the king of Greece and skipped about 150 years of history in one verse. So I think we're doing something like that here in verse 36. I mentioned before how this can happen. These sorts of subject switches can happen. And I believe it's happening here. And I don't think that this is referring to any one Roman king in particular, as much as a general blanket statement that will describe them all. Different Roman emperors will have different sets of individual beliefs. But as a whole, they're all going to be like this. The Roman Empire itself is going to be like this. In order to hold itself together, they're going to honor the gods of fortresses, and they're going to hand out money and tribute to whoever willingly works for them. Remember back in the vision in chapter 2 of the statue, the legs of iron and the feet of iron and clay, how some parts of the kingdom will be strong and some will be weak. That's a reference to the client kingdom system that Rome employed, where they would pay, if you didn't want to lose your own independence over your if you were the king, and you did not want to, let's say Herod the Great, and you did not want to be destroyed by the Romans and subjugated by them, and you wanted to still be king over your territory, you could pay them, and they would leave you alone as long as you paid them. You would still be king over your territory. You would still have complete rule over the people who live in your territory, but you would have to pay Rome every, tribute every so often for them to stay away from trying to conquer you by force. And that was the client, and that worked some places and didn't work as well in other places. So I believe that is what that is referring to. I believe verses 36 through 39 are just kind of setting the stage for what the Roman Empire will be like in general. Now here in verse 40, we're going to get into a little bit more specifics. Oh no. This is bad. Couldn't quite make it through all the way. Just couldn't quite do it. At the time of the end, the king of the south, this is the end of the Grecian kingdom. This will be, again, the time of the end does not mean the end of the world, okay? That is just something that we always have to, we want to think that. It just sounds so cool to us. I mean, we're living thousands of years after the events have happened, okay? And so it doesn't, so it's long past the end to us, so we want to think it's still end in the future, but it's not, okay? This is the end of the Grecian kingdom. This is the end of the Seleucid and Ptolemaic kingdoms of the Grecian Empire. This is not the end of the world. At the time of the end, the king of the south, that's the Ptolemaic, this in this case would be Mark Antony, who was husband of Cleopatra. Cleopatra was a member of the Ptolemaic line, and she was the last ruler of Egypt before, this is Cleopatra the Seventh, that is, before it was totally conquered by Rome, and her suitor or lover was Mark Antony, which is probably who this is referring to. Will engage him in battle, and the king of the north will storm out against him. So the king, of the north here is now the king of Rome. So in this case, I believe... Cat, please leave me alone. Just give me 15 more minutes, please. So annoying. I just have to put all the time. I mean, even in these videos today, you've seen this several times. This is just my life. Every day, on an hourly basis, I have to put up with this. It drives me nuts. And the king of the north, in this case, is referring to the king of Rome, who I believe in particular here is the guy who will be the first Caesar, Augustus, Octavius, right now. And the king of the north will storm out against him with chariots and cavalry and a great fleet of ships. The climactic battle between Rome and Egypt was the Battle of Actium, which was a naval battle on the coast of Greece in 31 BC. The Roman forces won. The Egyptian forces, Mark Antony and Cleopatra, fled, and they went back to Egypt, and the Roman forces pursued them there. He will invade many countries and sweep through them like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful land. He will go probably after he conquers Egypt. Many countries will fall. That Edom, Moab, and the leaders of Ammon will be delivered from his hand. I am not entirely certain of the historical fulfillment of that. He will extend his power over many countries. Egypt will not escape. He will gain control of the treasures of gold and silver and all the riches of Egypt, with the Libyans and Nubians in submission. I believe this is referring to when the Romans conquered the remnants of the Ptolemaic kingdom and subjected it all to their authority. But reports in the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in great rage to destroy and annihilate many. I am not sure what that means. He will pitch his royal tents between the seas at the beautiful holy mountain. I don't know I don't know if he literally did that or not. I don't know. Genuinely don't know. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. Again, that may be a reference to Augustus Caesar, or maybe a blanket reference to the king of the north in general, the king of Rome in this case. It may not be a specific reference to any one king, but a blanket statement about the king of the north in general. In this case, the king of Rome, who now moved back into the era of the fourth beast.